So I want you to picture like a 3-year-old child just sitting in a sandbox.
Okay.
They could be in Paris or, Tokyo, Buenos Aires, wherever. And this kid is just chattering away. They are speaking their native language with this absolute effortless fluency.
Right. Their pronunciation is flawless.
Exactly. They just naturally navigate the rhythm of the sentences perfectly.
Yeah.
But if you were to ask that 3-year-old what past participle is, or, ask them to find the direct object in what they just said.
Yeah, they just stare at you blankly.
Totally. They'd stare at you and probably just go right back to eating sand. I mean, they have zero academic understanding of the language they're actually speaking.
Which is, it's actually the complete inverse of how most adults approach learning a new language. Their execution is perfect, but the theoretical knowledge is basically non-existent.
And that massive contrast right there, that's the foundation of our deep dive into the sources today.
Yeah.
Because, well, if you're listening to this, you've probably experienced the incredibly frustrating adult version of that exact scenario.
Oh, absolutely.
You decide to learn a new language. You spend years, literally years, studying the grammar rules, doing the vocabulary flashcards, drilling all the syntax.
Building up this massive academic database in your head.
Right. But then the moment you actually find yourself standing in front of a native speaker, maybe you're literally just trying to order a coffee, your brain completely freezes.
Yeah, the palms start sweating.
You stutter, you panic, and all that data you spent years studying just refuses to turn into spoken words.
Because the information is stored safely in your cognitive vault.
Right.
But the retrieval mechanism just completely fails under pressure.
Yeah.
And the source material we're unpacking today, it offers this really incredibly practical guide to shattering that cycle. Because the goal here is to completely reframe language acquisition.
Okay.
We're moving far away from the traditional textbook memorization, the reading, the writing, the syntax drills, and we are going to start treating language not as a subject you study, but as a physical, neurological exercise.
Okay, so the mission for this deep dive is to figure out exactly how to tap into that toddler magic.
Right.
We're looking at a specific technique from the source called shadowing, or some call it hidden repetition.
Right.
And we're going to explore how you can acquire this highly accurate accent and adopt real, actual, stutter-free fluency without ever even leaving your room.
Yeah.
But I feel like, to start, we have to talk about that paradigm shift.
The physical exercise part.
Yeah, because calling language a physical exercise instead of an intellectual one, that's a huge shift for most people.
It is, but it's a completely necessary one. Because honestly, our traditional methods are fundamentally flawed when it comes to actual speech production.
Yeah.
Just think about the standard high school language lab experience.
Oh man, the headphones, little tape recorders.
Exactly. The traditional method is entirely sequential. You listen to a phrase on a tape, then the audio pauses, and then in the silence, you sit there and try to recreate what you just heard from your short-term memory.
So you're basically taking an auditory memory test every single time you open your mouth.
Yes, which forces your brain into this highly analytical state. You're sitting there frantically trying to recall the vocabulary, you're checking the grammar, you're trying to piece the whole sentence together before you even speak.
Right, which takes forever.
But shadowing destroys that sequential loop. The guide defines it as acting as a literal shadow to a native speaker. So you are speaking along with the audio at the exact same time. The delay between what you hear and what you say should be no more than half a second.
So you completely remove the pause.
Entirely.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I was trying to think of the best way to visualize this instantaneous repetition. And the closest thing I think we all do naturally is singing along with your favorite song on the radio.
No, that's a great comparison.
Right, because when you're driving down the highway and that one track comes on, you don't pause the music to sing your part in silence.
No, you sing over it.
You sing right over it. And when you do that, you aren't just reciting lyrics from memory like a robot. You naturally mimic the artist's exact rhythm, their breathing, the pitch, the emotion. You catch all those tiny little vocal inflections because you're basically just riding the wave of their voice.
What's fascinating here is that language, at its very core, is music. I mean, it possesses rhythm, prosody, and a very distinct physical cadence.
Yeah.
When you shadow a native speaker, you are mimicking the tone, the stress, the articulation, and the breath. But the reason this is so profoundly different from, reading a textbook is the physical demand it puts on your body.
What do you mean?
Well, we tend to view speaking a foreign language as a knowledge problem, right? Like something for the cerebral cortex to solve. But pronunciation is actually a muscular
Wait,
process.
so we are talking about literal muscle training here, like taking your face to the gym.
Basically, yeah, your vocal cords, your tongue, your lips, the soft palate at the back of your throat, these are physical muscles. And if you've spent your entire life speaking only English, those muscles have been heavily, heavily optimized to produce English sounds.
Okay, I see where you're going.
They're physically conditioned to form English shapes. So when you suddenly try to speak Arabic or French or Mandarin, you are demanding that those exact same muscles perform gymnastics they have literally never attempted before.
Oh, wow. That makes perfect sense, actually. It's like if someone has only ever played tennis their entire life, right, and suddenly you hand them a golf club, they understand the overall concept of hitting a ball. The general physical fitness is there.
Right.
But the highly specific neural pathways and the, like, micro-coordination required for a golf swing, that simply doesn't exist in their nervous system yet.
Exactly. And so the tennis player will inevitably try to swing the golf club like a tennis racket, and language learners do the exact same thing.
Because it's what they know.
Right. They try to produce French sounds using English muscle movements, which results in a really heavy, awkward accent. So the primary objective of shadowing, especially in the early stages, it isn't to comprehend the meaning of every single word in real time.
It's not.
No, the objective is to physically train your vocal apparatus to produce entirely new sound profiles. You are building pure muscle memory.
Okay, I understand the physical conditioning aspect, but I kind of have to push back a little on the ultimate utility of this.
Sure.
Because let's say I shadow perfectly. I mimic the audio with that half-second delay. Aren't I just doing an impression?
What do you mean?
Like, I can do a fairly decent impression of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but that doesn't make me an Austrian bodybuilder, and it certainly doesn't mean I can generate my own fluent German sentences under pressure.
That's fair.
Right. At the coffee shop, I won't have a native speaker whispering in my ear for me to parrot. So how does mimicking a track actually help me formulate speech when I'm on my own?
Well, that skepticism is totally valid because you're assuming speech generation happens in a vacuum.
Yeah.
To understand why this actually works, we have to look at what the source reveals as the polyglot secret.
Okay.
Polyglots, individuals who speak 5, 10, or even more languages fluently, they rely heavily on this simultaneous repetition technique because it fundamentally rewires how the brain approaches speech under pressure. It solves that exact coffee shop freeze-up you described earlier.
But by doing what?
By completely dismantling your translation filter.
The translation filter.
Yeah, let's examine what actually happens when you freeze at that coffee shop. You are engaging in this grueling series of mental gymnastics. First, you conceptualize what you want to say in your native language.
Right. I want a black coffee.
Then, you search your mental dictionary for the foreign equivalent of every single word. Next, you run those words through all the grammar rules you memorized to conjugate the verbs properly. And finally, you try to arrange your mouth to pronounce it correctly.
And, by the time I've done all that, the barista's just staring at me, I'm sweating, and I've completely forgotten the first word I even wanted to say. It is an exhausting sequence.
It is exhausting, and more importantly, it's incredibly slow. But simultaneous repetition forces the brain to instantly link the auditory input directly to the physical act of speaking.
Because of the half-second delay?
Exactly. Because you only have that half second, your brain literally lacks the processing time to route the information through that analytical translation filter. You basically short-circuit the overthinking mechanism.
So the ear connects directly to the mouth.
Precisely. You build direct neurological pathways between the auditory processing center of the brain and the motor cortex. By repeatedly forcing this instantaneous connection, your nervous system learns to respond to the sounds of the language physically without needing to analyze them academically first.
Man, that's fascinating. And the source actually highlights some psychological data here too, right? Studies show this specific technique breaks the fear of speaking, and it totally dismantles the stuttering complex in record time. Which honestly makes sense when you realize that stuttering in a new language rarely comes from a lack of vocabulary.
Right, it's not a data issue.
It's hesitation. It's the absolute fear of making a mistake.
Yeah, linguists refer to this anxiety as the affective filter. And when your affective filter is high, your brain essentially throws up a wall that blocks both learning and performance. But shadowing lowers that wall because it removes the terrifying pressure of original thought.
Because you aren't creating the sentence.
Exactly. You are not responsible for the grammar or the vocabulary in that moment. You're just riding the wave of the native speaker's voice.
It's like it provides the psychological safety of wearing a mask. You get used to hearing your own physical voice producing these really complex foreign sounds perfectly at a natural speed. That has to build an incredible reservoir of subconscious confidence.
Oh, absolutely. You are tricking your brain into realizing that you are physically capable of speaking this language fluently.
So the translation filter gets bypassed, the anxiety just evaporates, and your muscles physically learn the choreography of the new language.
That's the perfect way to summarize it.
So what does this all mean for the listener? Like, the obvious question is how to actually begin doing this tomorrow without getting completely overwhelmed.
Right.
If the goal is to build these neural pathways, I assume turning on like a super fast-paced Spanish soap opera and just trying to shout over the actors is a terrible idea.
Yeah, that is a guaranteed recipe for frustration. You don't want to do that. The source lays out a very deliberate progression to ensure you're actually building muscle memory rather than just inducing cognitive overload.
Okay, so step one.
Step one, the first rule is to curate your material ruthlessly. You need to select really short audio clips. The sweet spot is between 30 to 60 seconds of a native speaker.
Okay, keeping it under a minute forces you to actually master the mechanics of the clip through repetition, rather than just vaguely stumbling through some 10-minute monologue where nothing sticks.
Exactly, and the source makes it absolutely clear. This clip must include a written transcript. It could be a specialized language dialogue, a podcast excerpt, or just a short video with perfectly accurate subtitles.
Because the transcript is your anchor.
Right. So once you have your short clip, the initial phase is completely passive. You don't attempt to speak at all. You simply listen to the audio while reading the translation just to grasp the context.
So you're asking, like, is the speaker angry about a late train? Are they joyfully recounting a childhood memory?
Yes. You are grounding the sounds in emotion and meaning, so your brain isn't just mimicking empty noise.
Got it. What's next?
Following that, you introduce the visual coordination. You play the audio and read the native text out loud, synchronously with the speaker.
So you're utilizing your eyes to connect the written symbols to the exact pronunciation you're hearing.
Exactly. This serves as a physical warm-up for the vocal muscles while keeping the safety net of the text completely intact.
And then comes the actual shadowing. Step 3.
The real deal.
You remove the safety net. You close the text entirely. You press play. Maybe close your eyes to heighten your auditory focus. And you speak directly over the native speaker, relying entirely on your ears and your mouth.
Yes.
But, and this brings us to a massively critical point from the sources. In fact, this might be the absolute most important technical instruction for anyone attempting this. When you begin this process, you must heavily focus on repeating the sentences slowly.
Oh, this is huge. The urge to rush to conversational speed right away is the biggest trap learners fall into.
But wait, if the audio is a native speaker talking at their natural rapid pace, how do I focus on repeating the sentences slowly? Doesn't slowing it down ruin the natural rhythm and prosody we're trying to mimic?
Okay, think about a musician learning a highly complex piano concerto.
Okay.
They do not sit down on day one and attempt to play the piece at full tempo. If they tried, their fingers would fumble, they'd mash the wrong keys, and they would ultimately just memorize bad habits.
Right, they reduce the tempo significantly.
Yes, they pay intense attention to the precise mechanics of their hands. And shadowing requires that exact same deliberate calibration for your vocal apparatus.
Like you have to master placing your fingers on the correct frets before you can strum the guitar quickly.
Exactly.
So we are essentially acting as a practical scientific guide for the micro movements of our own mouths.
That's it. You must use software or an app to slow the audio down to maybe a 0.75 or even 0.5 speed and really focus on repeating the sentences slowly. This slow repetition gives your brain the necessary processing time to map out the exact physical requirements for the new sounds.
Because you have to clearly articulate the letters.
Yes. You need to feel exactly where your tongue is placed behind your teeth. You need to observe how your lips are rounded and really notice where the vibration sits in your throat.
Because if you just rush into speaking at full speed, you will inevitably default to your native language habits just to keep up. You'll be speaking French with a thick, awkward English accent, simply because you haven't given your muscles the time to learn the new acrobatics.
Right.
You're basically just reinforcing the wrong muscle memory.
Right. Calibrating the instrument takes patience. You really have to focus on repeating the sentences slowly to build the absolute correct physical foundation. And then you only gradually increase the speed of the audio once that physical clarity is established, scaling it up day by day until you seamlessly match the natural native pacing.
Oh, yeah. Transforming this from a stressful academic test of memory into a highly deliberate physical practice is just a total game changer. And honestly, the most encouraging takeaway from this entire deep dive is how incredibly accessible this practice actually is.
He really is.
Because we're not talking about locking yourself in a library with grammar workbooks for 4 hours a day.
No, not at all. The time commitment required to see actual neurological changes is surprisingly minimal.
Yeah, the source explicitly states that this requires only 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes of highly dedicated, focused shadowing.
That's all it takes to start.
You take a 45-second clip, you establish the context, read along, and then dedicate yourself to the core technique.
Yeah.
You focus on repeating the sentences slowly, clarifying the articulation of the letters, and building that muscle memory.
And if you maintain that 5-minute daily physical practice, the data suggests you will witness a radical transformation in your accent, your flow, and most importantly, your confidence within just a few weeks.
Which ultimately dismantles one of the most pervasive and, frankly, discouraging myths about language learning.
Oh, the talent myth.
Yeah. Society tends to view fluency, or having a good ear for languages, as some sort of innate magical talent.
Yeah.
You're either born a language person or you're just doomed to struggle forever.
Right, like there's this predetermined academic ceiling you can't break through.
Exactly.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying message of this methodology is that fluency is not a talent. It is pure muscle memory. It is a neurological pathway that is forged through deliberate repetition. Shadowing fundamentally changes your relationship with the concept of language altogether. It shifts it from being a subject you study like history or calculus to a motor skill you master like riding a bicycle, swimming, or serving a tennis ball.
And when you reframe it as a physical habit, the paralyzing pressure of being smart enough just totally evaporates.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't ruthlessly judge your intellect when you fall off a bicycle the first time you try to ride it.
No, of course not. You simply recognize that your nervous system hasn't figured out the balance yet. It's a physical coordination problem, not an intelligence problem.
And speaking a new language works exactly the same way.
It democratizes fluency. It proves that anyone, regardless of their age or their perceived academic ability, can physically train their way to speaking naturally. The stuttering isn't a lack of knowledge, it's just a muscle group waiting to be conditioned.
Which leaves us with a really fascinating final thought to mull over today. We spent this entire deep dive analyzing language. We've established that language fluency, something we have historically treated as an intense, terrifying intellectual hurdle, is actually just a physical motor skill driven by muscle memory.
Right.
It is quite literally a physical habit waiting to be trained. So for you listening, take a look at your own life right now. Think about the specific skills or goals you tell yourself you just aren't smart enough to achieve.
That's a great question.
Right. If the monumental intellectual challenge of speaking a foreign language is really just a physical habit in disguise, what other intellectual roadblocks in your life are actually just physical habits waiting to be trained? What else could you master if you just stopped trying to study it from a textbook and started trying to actually shadow it in the real world?
Exactly.
So the next time your brain starts to freeze and buffer, maybe you don't need more data. Maybe you just need to get out of your head, trust the process, and let your muscles do the talking. Until next time, keep diving deep.